What is up YouTube, and welcome to this Jupiter's Legacy video. Today we will be discussing a character in the show and his complete comic book history and what the changes are between the two. This person is Fitz, aka The Flare. Thank you so much for the love you've shown on my other videos, and please let me know if you want more of these and also more Invincible complete histories in the comments. I make what you want. Please do also drop a like down below if you enjoyed the video and subscribe with notifications on, as it does help us out massively. Just like the other characters I have covered here on this channel for Jupiter's Legacy, Fitz has a wildly different take in the comics as opposed to the show, and we will be covering his comic book history here, and I will point out the differences between the two mediums. As with everyone else, our boy left in search of the island with Sheldon. However, while in the show he was a steel mill working guy, having been convinced by his former employer to go with him based on a vision, well, also vastly different is how in the show Fitz has both his parents around despite his father leaving him and his mother in the comic. In the comics, Fitz was simply a friend of Sheldon, but in both mediums, the character became a founding member of the Union of Justice. After gaining his powers, he becomes the Flare and can turn himself into light and has the power of flight, super strength, and shoot energy projectiles. He has a wife in the comics named Joyce, who he met at the age of 21, and he eventually has 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. However, his home life would be upturned heavily after a battle in the Midwest. It is here that he meets a younger girl named April Kelly. Now, the pair begin to have an affair behind his wife's back, and eventually, despite April having 0 superpowers, he takes her on as his apprentice and sidekick, with her making a splash in the media when she is unveiled. Now, as their affair rumbles on, Fitz actually attempts to get April to join the Union of Justice, but the rest of the Union refuse. Now, while mainly they refuse due to the fact she has no powers, which is, of course, a danger to her life, and she's just only 19, they also refuse as his affair is an affront to Joyce, which they all deem very, very unfair on his current wife. However, Fitz has actually been justifying this whole thing, saying that he's actually fallen out of love with Joyce and the pair have absolutely nothing in common. But it's after this he's given an ultimatum. He is told, you must end the affair or face expulsion from the Union of Justice. Now, he does end the affair because, he wants to stick with the Union of Justice because it's a pretty, cushy gig. However, he actually plays somewhat of an interesting hand. He divorces Joyce and then ends up proposing to April, who actually accepts. However, his world is turned upside down once more. In a battle, he actually suffers some serious injuries, leading him to become a paraplegic. Now, April actually refuses to help and be by his side because, well, she's just young and, well, she decides to leave town. And, well, he's berated by his teammates. But Joyce actually stands by her ex-husband and decides to take care of him, and the pair are back together. Of course, they have some kids, and I'd imagine they wanted to stay together for the kids, to quote Blink-182. By 1965, he is able to actually get his powers back and able to fight crime once more. However, in the show, it is wildly different, as Fitz in the show is actually scarred and needs to use a wheelchair to get around. He also has a daughter who is a superhero in the Union of Justice. As well as this, he in the show is a genius engineer, having created many, many different things that the Union of Justice use to fight crime. Now, we did see the early days of that when he was working on the machine on the boat to the island, but here in the actual comic, it's a bit different. He's just a guy who got powers, and I kind of actually prefer the story here in the show, albeit we haven't seen much of his time in the Union of Justice in the show, as we've only really seen them sit there at their table and walk around, and I'm hoping that Series 2 does go into that in a bit more detail. However, in the comics, he would later fight Dr. Hobbs, who would strip Fitz of his powers, and, well, his story in Jupiter's Legacy, the comic, is pretty threadbare. Now, interestingly, in the show, Dr. Hobbs actually meets with Sheldon regularly, and he was quite a big kind of endgame person there in Jupiter's Legacy, and I'm interested to see where this actually goes next. Obviously, I do believe that this storyline will actually split off further and further, and as with most Miller World productions, they are wildly different to the comic books. Just think The Wanted and the other Kick-Ass style products. But overall, I think this is an interesting story, and I'm going to be very curious to see where they decide to take this show next. This might be the end of my series on these people, but let me know if you want some Invincible stuff down below. And please do drop a like if you've enjoyed the video, and do subscribe with notifications on if you want more from us. I'll see you soon, and goodbye.